This is unfortunately a recurring theme in Warsaw. A major plan is introduced, it starts, and then due to various reasons it ends. So one was by Augustus, another one was by the mayor, Stefan Starzyński, who was given power over Warsaw in 1934. And he came in and he had this dream. There is this quote of him saying that I had a dream, and that was for Warsaw to be grand. So he also started many projects. Some of them were completed, but for example, the Warsaw metro system that was very far gone in the planning stage, and was more or less most of those projects were scheduled to be completed by the mid-1940s. But naturally, with the outbreak of the Second World War, all of that came to nothing. And in general, we can also mention that the Germans, they came up with this so-called Papst plan. They planned to have their little administrative capital city, so to say, of the General Gouvernement, this part of Poland that was not directly annexed to the Third Reich, but rather ruled in some experimental fashion by this sadistic man, Dr. Hans Frank. They decided that the administrative center would be in Krakow. Warsaw, however, has a reputation of being a rebellious city. It only means trouble, so we should try to downsize the city as much as possible. So this was a deliberate attempt to make Warsaw as insignificant as possible. This was already put into work during the occupation, but naturally with the Warsaw Uprising, they took the decision to completely level the city after the uprising had already been quelled. So Warsaw was destroyed to 90% or so of all the buildings were razed to the ground.
It's probably worth mentioning when you talk about Warsaw being the centre of rebellion, of course, in the 19th century, the Russians and Alexander II and the citadel. Exactly. This huge military base structure on the northern edge of Warsaw, as it then was, which now is being renovated to become the new home of the Polish Military Museum, or the Museum of the Polish Army.
Yes. The Museum of the Polish Army has been housed in the National Museum now for decades. And it never was a long-term solution. So the National Museum has had to have a lot of its exhibition articles, so to say, stuffed in some basement somewhere, since they simply didn't have enough space. So now that the Military Museum will be able to move out to the Citadel, all of these other beautiful pieces of art will be able to take their rightful place in the National Museum. And in general, this area around the Citadel will be given this new great museum of the Polish military. But they have also built the Katyn Massacre Museum right next to it. And under construction is the Museum of Polish History, which should be finished, I think, in a year or two. So again, any tourists that are planning to visit Warsaw in the coming years, make sure to put the Citadel down for a visit. It was built after the November uprising of 1830, 1831, as a lot of the unrest started really in Warsaw, and the Russians were caught slightly off guard. They decided to build this horrendous citadel in which they would later jail and torture and execute many of the people that were the leading forces behind the November uprising. You have to give it to the Russians, though. They were on point with identifying that Warsaw was a point of trouble and hotheads. So when the January uprising broke out in 1863, 1864, due to the menacing presence of the citadel, there was no chance for any fighting really to take place in Warsaw itself. Instead, the local rebellious leaders decided to leave the town and go and fight in this form of guerrilla warfare that would take place in mainly in forests outside of Warsaw. So the 19th century, especially after the January uprising and after the November uprising, because there was this short period of time after the Congress of Vienna in 1815 when you had the liberal Tsar Alexander II in power, and he did view in general there was the Polish Congress Kingdom that had autonomy at least, and there was some room for Warsaw to grow.
Adam, as usual, the clock has defeated. I'm just going to have to ask you to pause there, but we will pick it up next time. There we are. I've interrupted Adam almost in mid-sentence, but we will pick up the story next time on Poland Daily History, so please join us then. In the meantime, thank you for watching.